Hi, I'm Kelly, and I was once an investigative reporter for 12 years. I have talked to a lot of law enforcement types over my career, and when a case gets complicated, like this Charlie Kirk thing, they love to tell you about Occam's razor. They'd say, Kelly, the simplest explanation is usually the best one.
This case is closed.
Friends, with all due respect, that is one of the things that is wrong with our country. The easy solution, the quick answer, the desire to close the book and move on. Because in the case of Charlie Kirk, the simple explanation is not only an insult to our intelligence, it's physically impossible. So we're going to dismantle it piece by piece. It all starts with the crime scene. So in college, I worked at my university's police department, and I was elected to student government too. Even 20 years ago, we knew how to secure a high-profile event. Actually, I remember when I met Bob Dole back in the day. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull up a picture, but the Charlie Kirk rally had none of the basics. No ticket scanning, no bag checks, no defined perimeter. For 3,000 people, I mean, that was more than the college that I went to, and we knew better back then, 20 years ago. What? But it seems this wasn't just incompetence. Kirk's security team was a newer firm that had recently undercut a more experienced one to get the TPUSA contract. But don't get too distracted on this point, because some of, if not most of, the security guards had been there with Charlie for years already. So it was kind of just a different firm by name and not in substance. They had decades of police and military training. What did we see from these professionals? Did anyone notice that these guys looked more like a football pileup than a security detail? Their first instinct didn't seem like it was to protect, it was more just to collapse. I never saw them draw their guns. They never looked for a shooter. They made zero effort to protect the 3,000 people that were there in the audience. And watch closely. Did anyone attempt CPR? Did they try to stop the bleeding? Did they rip off their shirt to try to do anything? There was no visible blood on any of the men attending to Charlie. There was no blood trail on the way to this private car. In fact, there wasn't an ambulance there, which still seems odd to me considering you had such a large size event with 3,000 people and it was like 95 degrees outside. I think it would be standard just in case someone had a random medical emergency. But there was no blood on anyone and not on the ground. And if uniformed campus police were anywhere, supposedly there were 6 of them, they certainly weren't visible in any of the videos that I saw. So despite all of these trained people, they failed to protect and they've failed to respond. But did they succeed at something else? Watch closely. So in the chaos, they appear to be quietly handing off something. I don't know, was it evidence? Maybe something that shouldn't be seen by others outside of the fray. And speaking of things that looked a little fishy or not as you might think, what if the threat wasn't 150, 200 yards away? What if it was much closer than we would have expected? Well, some people have theorized that for an inside job or maybe even a staged event, a small directed charge or a blood squib or something in the microphone pack could be just as effective as a bullet. Was the real threat like already on Charlie? I'll tell you, I've seen crazier things even at the National Spy Museum in DC. Look, we were using flying pigeons with cameras in Germany 100 years ago in 1915. So if you don't think that the technology exists to pull off some kind of optical illusion or operation that you've never seen or heard of before in the Charlie Kirk case, just know that it is possible. And while all of this was happening on the ground, a war was being waged online nearly instantaneously. AI-generated bots manipulating our emotions and muddying the waters. This was not just a shooting, y'all. It was an information warfare operation from minute one. The entire official story rests on one person, 22-year-old Tyler Robinson. But which one? Look at the suspect on the stairs of the campus building. Here he is, supposedly in the heat of the moment. Now, look at this surveillance image a few hours later, after he supposedly committed what may be the crime of the century. He's calm, He's just ordered some DQ, but look closer. Look at that jawline, the lips, the broadness of the shoulders. Do you think it's the same person? And even if it was, let's go back to the rooftop. By now, you've seen that video of a figure dressed in all black running across the rooftop seconds after firing that shot that killed Charlie Kirk. But where is the video of that person firing that shot? Does it even exist? We don't know. Once he has Spider-Man'd it down the building and makes his way to the woods, and he has reassembled the gun and wrapped it up in the towel, after all of that planning, then he texts his lover about the whole thing, including a bizarre, cheesy line about how he thought he would keep this a secret until he died of old age, my love. This is not the behavior of a criminal mastermind, my friends. So where are the people who could help clear this up? Well, per Candace Owens, Tyler's parents have been convinced since early on, and maybe have had a change of heart since, but they were convinced early on to go into witness protection out of fear that they could be retaliated against. That's why we haven't heard from them. As for the roommate, Lance Twiggs, the sole source of this radicalization story, I do believe that he exists based on property records that I've looked up personally. The condo that he and Tyler were living in, Lance's dad owns that, but apparently no one has heard from Lance. He's maybe in hiding, protected, perhaps because of the feds or whoever else is behind this. I guess they can't have us citizen journalists or anyone else talking to these people. Now, can they?
This isn't happening. Everyone look away, please. Nothing to see here.
If the story of the Patsy doesn't add up, the behavior of the inner circle of Charlie Kirk makes even less sense. This is where the potential cover-up goes from being a theory to something you can't stop staring at. Let's start with the most basic question in any murder investigation, the autopsy. Officially, the cause of death is a single gunshot wound. But was an autopsy even done? Legally, it should be, but officially, we don't know. We have a tweet from one of Turning Point's top employees saying Charlie's surgeon called him a man of steel, that his body composition saved others miraculously. And don't get me wrong, I believe in miracles. In fact, my 7-year-old and his cabin mates narrowly survived the Texas floods this summer, thank goodness. But this is different. There are far too many inconsistencies.
Nothing on this tailgate is going to stop 30-06 round, including the tailgate.
Countless ballistic experts online have demonstrated that a round of that size doesn't just pierce a neck, it eviscerates it. The visual evidence simply does not match the weapon.
Literal steel can't stop a 30-06 round. So actually, the whole man of steel argument doesn't even make sense, does it?